All right. Hello, Mark. How you doing? How's it going?
Good. Great. Thanks for
Mark,
having me.
I'm very happy to talk with you about the new Z5, which is a great camera and something we want to talk about it. And I want you to explain me about the Z5. What is the target? What is my consumer target I can reach with this type of camera?
Yeah, absolutely. So we announced this camera earlier a few weeks ago, and it'll be available at the end of August. This is the latest camera in the Z series lineup. This is our Z5. It is a full frame mirrorless camera. It's the fourth that we've released since we came out with the Z system less than 2 years ago now. So this is the fourth camera, the third full frame camera. It sits in price point between our DX, that's a crop sensor Z50, and then the full frame Z6. It sits right in the middle of price point, but it's very similar to the Z6 in terms of specifications. So in answer to your question, who is this camera really designed for? I think we're targeting people that want to take the plunge into full frame here in 2020, get 2020 specifications, 51,200 ISO, 24 megapixels at full frame. And if people are looking for a full frame option nowadays, there's still DSLR options, there's mirrorless options. Why would you go for the mirrorless? Well, with the Z5, the price point we've released it at is very attractive. It basically did not have any compromises. It inherited, I would say, about 90% of the features from the big brother, the Z6. So I think this is very attractive for people that want a no compromise a camera that doesn't cut any corners in terms of the feature sets and wants a good solid full frame camera, be it DSLR or mirrorless. But specifically the mirrorless, there's enormous advantages in our Z system. And that all starts with the mount. So the mount that we released 2 years ago with the Z system is a large 55 millimeter diameter. It allows us to make lenses we've never had before in the past, as well as the flange distance, which is very, very slim, and it allows us to also create better optics. So I would say it's for people that want the best technology today, that bang for the buck that you can get with the Z5.
Mark, can you talk to me a little bit about the stabilization system in this camera?
Yes, again, for the price point, this comes with image stabilization built into the sensor. So that's commonly known as IBIS, in-body image stabilization. And that helps you stabilize your shots both on stills as well as video. So this also has 4K video as well. We'll talk about the video specs in a second. But unlike DSLR customers that rely on the lens for vibration reduction or image stabilization, this has it built into the body. So what that means is that essentially every lens that you pair to this Z5 will have stabilization, up to 5 stops, but also in 5 different axes. So whereas an SLR system would usually only have stabilization on 2 axes, up, down, left, right, this also has pitch and yaw as well as roll. So that's very important, especially for video.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Great, that's awesome. I think the 5-axis is going to be a big deal because our competitors in the same level, they don't have it. So that means
that's right.
we're gonna use that one like a big deal for the camera.
Yes,
Talking about the memory
I just wanted to specify that the 5-axis is for Z-series lenses. So to get Z-series lenses, you will have 5-axis stabilization. Whereas if you pair, say, an F mount lens on this, you'll have 3-axis.
Okay, but still great for videographers.
Yes.
Which is right now with this new pandemic, people want to record everything. So there are more people, they're YouTubers, bloggers, they want to just broadcasting. So the stabilization built in is allow them to don't use those new gears. They are heavy and probably expensive, which is great.
Especially if you're correct, Jose. If you're going to do handheld shooting, vlogging, and if you don't have a gimbal, for example, if you don't have those type of supports and you just want to do hand holding, the built-in stabilization from the optical stabilization from the IBIS is very important. You mentioned people doing things like YouTubing. I will mention that one of the new features on the Z5 is the ability to power it through the USB port. So if we're going to talk about video specs just for a second, I think I also want to mention to people the differences between the Z5 and the Z6, namely in terms of the 4K video. So a lot of people might be out there looking at your video right now trying to determine, do they want to get a Z6 or a Z5, and trying to justify what the differences are in the price. Well, with the Z6, it can record 4K at full frame. This is a 1.7 times crop, so that's a very important differentiation. Both of them can record at 30 frames per second as well as 24 frames per second in 4K. That's important for Z5 customers to know because, again, at that price point, 30 frames per second at 4K is important, but customers should know that on a Z6, they can shoot a full frame. So a 50 millimeter is really a 50 millimeter, whereas on this one, you do have to do a cropping factor of 1.7. Can be an advantage at times, but also you just have to take that into consideration. The other thing is that this records at 1080 at 60 frames, up to 60 frames per second. It also does 24 and 30, but the Z6 will give you the option to do 120 frames per second, as well as 10-bit out through the HDMI port. That's what the Z6 can give you. We also have a firmware update to allow it to do raw 12-bit from the HDMI port. So there's some higher level video features on the Z6, but as far as everything else on the Z5, it's very identical to the Z6. I actually have both cameras right here for you. I mean, you see the build quality there. They are identical from the back. The positions and the controls are identical.
They're so close. The people, it's easy for customers get confused. They don't know the difference in both cameras. They put the outside of the body, it looks the same.
That's right. The one physical difference I will show you is at the top, we've moved the mode dial over to where an LED panel used to be. So that's one of the differences between that and the Z6, which I have right here. You'll see, but that's essentially the only build difference in the body. The build quality is the same. The weather sealing is the same. It is a magnesium alloy at the front and the front and top of the chassis, so it's a good sturdy build. It will actually be at the same build quality as the Z6. Yeah, so it's great for professional photographers as well that need that build quality.
Customers, they're not gonna feel like they're missing something from the C6 because it's pretty much the same build, the same resistance and the body.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, Z6 has some things that the Z5 doesn't in terms of video, but I'm going to tell you right now a couple of things that the Z5 has that the Z6 doesn't that we introduced in this, and namely, we have to talk about the dual card slots.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is the first Z camera that we introduced 2 card slots, and our customers have been asking for that ever since we released the Z system in 2018. Particularly wedding and event photographers that only have one chance to get the shots that they need. And we've implemented SD cards in this now. So again, for this price point, for this customer, the readily available memory card slots of the SD make it more convenient for people to access, a little bit more economically friendly for people to access, and it gives them the peace of mind that wedding and event photographers need to have that little bit of backup when they're shooting their stills. So that applies for the stills, not for the video. The video, you can assign which card slots will shoot the video depending on which one has more space. But that's definitely something that our customers have been asking for.
Mark, talking about memory cards, in the past, you know, they jumped to the regular SD card to the XQD cards, CF cards, and the customers, they said, "Oh wow, the memory cards are great, but are kind of expensive." There is a different right now, different kind of card that we're gonna use with the Z50, or it's gonna be
Z5.
The Z5 is gonna be the same card?
The Z5 is compatible with SD cards, namely up to the UHS-2 standard right now. So you can get, that's the thing about SD cards. You can get them all the way from the cheaper end to the most expensive at 300 megabytes per second. The minimum requirement that we recommend is a UHS card that is class 3. So the class 3 will permit the 4K video and at 30 megabytes per second. That should be the minimum that people should get. They can get the UHS-2 at 300 megabytes per second, but they have a lot of different options. We recommend at least class 3 for UHS.
Great. I mean, I think the memory card SD, which is really popular, is not too costly. It's going to be a big advantage because you know sometimes they want to buy the camera, but they find out the memory card costs hundreds of dollars. So,
sure, and that's going to be the case as well. Feedback that we had with some of the XQD cards and now CF Express, but there are advantages to that too, Jose. So with the CF Express cards and the XQD cards, they do have faster writing speeds, higher capacities, and they're also very reliable. So in the future, if you're looking at a Z6, that's the format of memory card that they'll use. But as you said, with the Z5, We've implemented SD. I think that'll be to the delight of the people that are looking at a camera, full frame camera at this price segment, especially as you said, if they're going to be upgrading from a DX camera, they might have already had a stockpile of SD cards. They can continue to use those on the Z5.
Hey, Mark, thank you. That's going to be awesome. Quick question. The low light performance in the new Z5, how the low light is on this new camera?
So if you look on our website, the specs, the native ISO on this goes from 100 to 51,200. And I think that's really important because our entry point into full frame, just a few months ago was the D750, and that was 12,800. Now you have an entry point into full frame from a price perspective that hits the 51,200 mark at the most lowest price that we've had for an entry level full frame. So it also has a high one that goes up to 100,000 ISO. So it's a broad range of ISO here. So the low light capability, your question really, I think, is catered towards what is the high ISO capability of the camera. And this goes up to 51,200 natively. On paper, that's the same as the Z6, but the Z6 does use an backside illuminated CMOS sensor. That's the difference between, one of the key differences between a Z6 and a Z5 is that the Z5 does not, it uses a conventional CMOS sensor, whereas the Z6 utilizes something called BSI, which is backside illuminated.
Oh, that's awesome. I think the low light is one of the features people look the most because they want a handheld in low light and get a good quality picture without sacrificing more quality, huh?
Definitely what you said, because people that are going to this camera might be used to using a crop sensor camera. Those pixels are smaller. They create much more noise. I think when you go to a Z5, people will immediately recognize the full frame difference, not only in terms of focal length, but also in terms of noise quality, as you said.
Yeah, that's I think it's great. The consumers, they can find a camera. It cannot be as expensive with the super features. They don't need it. And something in between, they can feel comfortable, and they also use regular and standard items like memory cards. And it has, not everybody can afford a gimbal. I don't want to carry a gimbal to go for a field trip or something like that. So I guess the stabilization is going to be great.
Well,
Mark,
yeah, go ahead.
The camera, the Z5, in comparison with our competitors. So if we want to compete with another brands, Nikon, what's gonna do, what they did in this camera to compete against the others?
I think if you're looking at a full frame camera now in 2020, and if you line them all up, what are the options that people have in there, and why would they look at a Z5? I would say it definitely has to start with the mount system. By the end of 2021, we're going to have 24 lenses for this mount, native to this mount. So that's the exciting part about the Z series. The S line as well as Z mount series lenses that have brand new optics that we simply could not devise for the F mount system because of the proximity of the sensor to the rear of the lens element. Now with the new mount system, that gives us an advantage. This is the combination of the largest and as well as the most shallow flange distance out of all the mounts out there right now in the market for 35 millimeter full frame format. So another reason that they would look at this solution here for full frame in 2020 also has to do with the lens that I'm showing right here. And this is a lens that we announced at the same time as the Z5. This is the 24 to 50. Now you can get this body as a kit, a body only configuration. So if people want, say, a second body, an inexpensive second body to go with their Z6 or Z7, they can get the Z5 body only for about $13.99. They can also get it with a compact, lightweight, but high performance 24 to 50 millimeter lens. It's an f4 to 6.3, but you save $100 when you get it as a kit. So this kit right here is $16.99 out of the gates when we come out with it in end of August as well. But just to layer on top of that, I just wanted to mention that we're also promoting a trade-in program as well for the Z5 to make it that much more enticing for people to get into the Z5 and upgrade from their existing cameras.
Oh, awesome. That's it. Everybody wants to get the cameras, but they don't. They have old cameras. Sometimes they don't want to give up the old camera. So probably it's going to be a great deals in terms of the trade-off.
Definitely a motivating factor for them. And I just want to mention too that the 24 to 50 can also be purchased a la carte, so as a lens only for about $399. And it's great if you just want a standard walk-around lens for your existing Z6 or Z7, but it also gives them a small, compact, very lightweight full frame setup. In the past, full frame has always been synonymous with larger lenses, and that's just because of the dimensions of the mount. But now we've essentially overcome that with this compact lens. We've been able to create a compact system for full frame at the zoom range of 24 to 50 that is very, very small. And one of the reasons we can do that, we made the aperture smaller as well. We can do that on mirrorless cameras because we have the electronic viewfinder, a very high resolution electronic viewfinder, the same resolution as on the Z6. You can see our exposure in real time. So again, another motivating factor for people that are upgrading from DSLR now in 2020 and are looking for not only a mirrorless camera, but a mirrorless full frame. I think Z5 has to be on the top of people's lists when they're narrowing down their choices.
And Mark, talk to me a little bit more about the technology on the lenses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why people, sorry, I interrupt you. Why they want to choose native lenses and not just get an adapter and use an all line of lenses? I think they want to prefer the native lenses, but I want you to give me some good reason for that.
I'll give you a couple of reasons, namely the VR, the stabilization that we talked about before is you'll get 5 axis as well as up to 5 stops when you pair it with a native Z lens on the Z mount. So that's number one. Number two is the type of focusing that we use in the new Z series lenses. They're quiet, they're fast, they're accurate, especially if you're doing video production. With F-mount lenses in the past, they've traditionally used AFS or silent wave motor lenses. They're very powerful, they're very fast, however, they're very noisy and they take a lot of energy. With S-line lenses, they use stepping motors, which uses far less energy, so you conserve on your battery power, and they're whisper quiet so that you don't actually hear the gears when you're recording video with the internal microphone. Lastly, they are the very good optics, far superior than the F-mount when it comes especially to wide angle because of the small flange distance. And as well, we can re-engineer these lenses to perform very, very sharp at the wide open aperture, something that we simply could not do with SLRs. So those lenses usually had to be stopped down 2 stops at least before you start performing close to maximum resolution. We can actually experience maximum resolution in terms of the resolving capability of the lens, even at wide open apertures. So whatever the lens is, like I have a 24 to 200 here, 24 to 50. I even have some of the more exotic prime lenses, 1.8s. We have the 0.95 NOC lens. All these lenses, we report that we can approach maximum resolution capability even at wide open apertures. That's a game changer. I see you have, lenses behind you. If you could take all those lenses and say you can operate at wide open aperture and get maximum resolution, that would be a game changer. And that's why
definitely.
That's why you have to look at the Z system.
Yes. And talking about lenses, and the lens is gorgeous. The camera low light performance is amazing. But what about the battery life? If I want to record a video and pictures, probably is. Let me know what's going on with the pictures. But what about how we can keep recording videos without worry about the battery life?
Yes, so I'm glad you brought that up. This is the first camera in our lineup, actually, in our history to have USB power delivery. So I'll explain exactly what that means. This now uses an ENEL ENEL 15 ENEL 15C batteries. So I'm getting all my batteries confused here, but this is the 3rd generation of this, or actually 4th generation of this battery. And what this allows us to do, for the ENEL 15 series, what this allows us to do is plug in a USB-C cord into the side of the Z5 and get what's called USB power delivery. And what that means is that you can record or operate the camera for an indefinite period of time. So as long as it's USB-C on both ends, And you can do things like what we're doing right now, webcasting or live streaming with your Z5 camera and not worry about the battery life running out. This does have an improved battery life. I believe it's 470 shots using the LCD screen. But the more important part is that we can now power the camera indefinitely without using AC power through an adapter through the battery compartment. We can use the USB-C connection, power it through your computer, power it through a wall using an EH7P adapter, AC adapter, or we can just power it through a USB power bank. If you're out in the field and need more power than the battery can supply, you can do longer video productions and do streaming or webcasting like we're doing right now. Actually, you and I are both using Z series cameras to record us right now, and that's the beauty. You don't have to rely on the webcam on your laptop. You can actually get better light, different depth of field with using these interchangeable mirrorless cameras. So that's a new feature that the Z5 has.
Yeah, a lot of people, they wondering why I should buy a camera so big, and to record videos I can use my phone to record the video. And well, the explanation is what you're saying. The background, the focus make more realistic the person, and the definition, the quality is way better. So you're definitely right. The quality in the video, it takes a little more effort, yes, but it's worth it. Definitely worth it. The quality.
Definitely.
And Mark, talking about the camera, what about the old lenses? We need to. They're gonna start disappearing, or they're gonna just keep going. So I don't need to worry about it. They're gonna replace it or they're gonna still both surviving on in the camera.
Well, as I said, we're gonna, by the end of 2021, we're gonna have 24 lenses native to the Z mount. But for people that are looking for specialized lenses, super telephoto lenses, all perspective control lenses, we have those within our F mount system, and we can adapt those using an FTZ adapter. So that's F mount on one side, Z mount on the other side, and it will. We have over 90 plus lenses that are fully compatible with the system, probably over 360 that have been ever made that will be compatible with the Z series. But we're continuing to support the development of those, and it's important because we have a lot of F-mount users, but we want to also harness the power and the selection of our F-mount portfolio into the Z5, Z6, Z7, even Z50 cameras, because there's such a breadth of different products. So it's definitely a great option, a great solution for people that are looking for a system as a whole, because not only are we going to have 24 lenses for the Z system by the end of 2021, but you can utilize the existing array of 90 plus lenses for whatever you're looking for. We're going to have that lens.
Yeah, that's right, because we have people, they spend $10,000 in a lens. They say, oh, now what? And at one point, they're not going to be compatible. And they're going to be compatible 100%. And with this new adapter, there are something they're losing.
No, actually, what they're going to do is they're going to gain stability. So, for example, if I wanted to shoot a wedding or a portrait with a 105 1.4, that lens does not have stabilization. A lot of our F-mount lenses don't have stabilization. They'll gain stabilization from the body if they use it with the FTZ adapter. So they don't lose any light. They don't lose their aperture does not change. They actually just gain functionality. They can even do things like focus peaking on the Z5, Z6, or Z7 that they could not do on their SLRs. So that's really important. They're just gaining functionality, and that's the salient point there.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I think that's great. And the other thing I wanna I have a question for you is mechanical or electronic shutter?
The camera has both, and there's an option for it to switch. The great thing about mirrorless is that you can operate completely silently. There are some things that you have to look out for depending on the light source you're using, depending on how fast the subject is moving. There are things called rolling shutter, but you can do both. Bottom line is you can shoot silently with absolutely no shutter at all, or you can use the mechanical shutter. There's also a feature built into them called electronic front curtain shutter, where the front curtain is electronic and the rear curtain is mechanical.
That's awesome. They have more options and more options, which is great for people that want to keep going learning the camera, because they don't have a limitation in how far they can go. They say, oh, okay, what if I want to learn more and be a more professional, but I don't want to jump and spend too much money, but I want to have a nice camera that could allow me to grow as far as I want and feel comfortable with the camera. With this model, I think they can get it.
I tell you, if somebody's coming from a smartphone and they just want a camera that they can invest in and grow in, this has a full green auto mode right here. So they can use it as a glorified point and shoot if they want to. And they can obviously grow the camera with all the manual and advanced modes that this has.
So there is no reasons why people want to be afraid of the camera.
Absolutely not. I mean, as I said, it has a green mode in it. You can see your exposure in the viewfinder. You can see what the shutter speed, aperture, and ISO does. That's why mirrorless is so inviting, because you can see in real time what's happening. Whereas in DSLRs, people usually have to, quote unquote, chimp and look at their screen to see how their picture turned out. Here, they can see it in real time. So as far as that goes, I think the mirrorless system is actually better for new photographers that are learning.
And one of the main concerns on our customers and the people is the sharpness on the photo. Yeah, the lens can do it, but what about the autofocus?
The autofocus system
autofocus on the camera
on the Z5 is the exact same as the Z6, and also it's going to give you features that DSLRs don't have, such as eye and face detect. We have eye and face detect, same as the firmware 3.0 on the Z6, and out of the gates, the Z5 will have that functionality. It works for humans as well as domestic pets, such as cats and dogs. And the face detection also works in video as well. So something very reliable you can utilize for vlogging. If I'm holding it here in front of me, I can have it just detect my face without worrying about focusing on the background. Very sophisticated, and it also encompasses 90% of the frame, something that DSLRs just can't do based on the autofocus modules. They're normally constrained to the middle portion of the frame. With the Z6, Z5, you have 90% frame coverage with 273 autofocus points. So very precise. You can have a lot of different compositional freedom, and as well, you have the precision of eye and face detect.
Well, I think it's just, and there is nothing missing on this new camera. Nothing they can be afraid they use, because it's friendly camera. I think it's great.
I think we covered it all. And if anyone wants any more information on that, they can definitely check out our websites, our respective websites.
Thank you very much for the information. I think it was great. I think it's great for everybody to know the new Z5. It is a great camera to buy, and there is nothing to be afraid. And it's going to take all the advantage to use the new Nikon gear.
You got it. Anytime, Jose. Thanks for having me.
Okay.